And now we turn to another YouTube star, and that is PBD. Patrick Bet-David is founder and CEO of Valuetainment and host of the PBD podcast. And he joins us to talk the latest on Trump, DeSantis, Tucker, and much, much more. Pat, welcome back to the show.
How are you?
I'm great. Would you be caught dead in the Little Nas cat outfit? Did you see the little, it's like it's squeezing him up the bottom and it's squeezing him down in the front. And there's really, gay is one thing, not one hint of you being a man left is another.
What's wild is how they're using him to market him. You know, he gets all the eyeballs, and God forbid somebody else stands out there and says, hey, boys, be a man. Hey, boys, stand up for yourself. Hey, go out there and defend yourself. Hey, be protective of women. Take care of the folks around you. You know, go out there and make some money. Go out there and do something for yourself. If we give a message that is very much of a pro-man message, God forbid you say something like that, but Little Nas X, hey, put him all over the place. You know what he's wearing? Oh, this guy's a superstar. He's a hero. And unfortunately, it's confusing a lot of different people. But for me to wear something like that, I don't even think I would wear something like that privately for my wife.
No, and nor would she want you to. I think I speak on her behalf.
She would not want me to. I've seen Borat. It's not a good look.
No, I will state for the record, we've been watching in the morning with my kids, because I follow him on Insta, videos of Jocko Willink, you know, who is like the Navy SEAL to end all Navy SEALs.
Oh, yeah.
And this morning we watched a video. It was Jocko discussing with Leif Babin, who married my friend Jenna Lee from Fox Business, BUD/S training, and how the SEAL team is like so much more than BUD/S training. Yes, it's difficult, but it's like you carried some logs and water, the way they described it. Like it doesn't compare at all to combat and war. And like that is who I want, especially my boys, listening to and looking at somebody like a man of service, a man of honor, a man who in some of his other messages says, whatever it is, it's your fault. You take responsibility, not somebody else. You. That's his whole thing, extreme accountability. Not these ridiculous people, Pat. I can't.
Well, listen, this is why Jocko is another super necessary voice. And what is happening is, if you ask me what the biggest leak is, the challenge we're having with parents and kids is whoever you and I edify as the hero, the kids want to be. Whatever we edify, the kids want to be. So if you edify a man like Jocko and your son is watching you and saying, hey, son, watch this man, Jocko. That's what you call a man. Your son's going to be like, my mom is edifying Jocko. I want to be like Jocko when I grow up. I want to be like Rogan when I grow up. I want to be like this man when I grow up, right? These guys are showing. There's a guy named Petros, good friend. He's an entrepreneur. He's doing things where father and sons are coming, learning about how to become men. There's a bonding thing that's going on with the father and son. They're doing push-ups. They're training. They're helping each other out. They're going out there doing all these exercises. There's a lot of good opportunities out there. I read recently we did a video on why the number one earners, immigrants in America, are Indian Americans, not Native Americans, Indian like from India, Americans. Yeah. They make more money on average in America than any other ethnicity in America, including whites. They make on average $120,000 per year. Number two, just so you know, is at $95,000, and whites were at $65,000. So then you said, this is kind of interesting. Let's take a look at this, because they're only 1% of the U.S. population, but 8% of all the startups, you know, when they're going to technology and all this stuff, there's all these success stories of how they invest their kids into STEM, all these things that they're doing. So then I went on this one website to see what's so special about Indian parenting that's different than others. So you go to this website. It's called India Parenting. They have these 10 points there. And one of the points was how they edify whatever behavior they want. So you over-edify. You edify and say, see what Johnny did? Great job, Johnny. See what that guy's doing? Great job. That's what you call a leader. That's what you call this. That's what you call that. Versus American parents are like, well, it's okay if they feel that way. Well, it's okay if you feel this way. Well, it's okay if you feel that way. Nope. That's a leader. That's a man. That's this. They're edifying them, right? But one of the points also out of the 10, Megyn, which was kind of interesting, is they also judge. They're not afraid to judge bad behavior, and said they're very judgmental of bad behavior. Interesting concept. Typically, when we hear the word judge, we don't think about it in a positive way. Say, no, Indian parents, they edify great behavior and they judge bad behavior. Unfortunately, the current society in America today, we are a little bit too accepting of every single behavior. And these kids are growing up saying, if mom's not judging that, if mom's not edifying that, I guess I'm just going to choose to be the little Nas X. I'm going to look up to this guy, Sam Smith. I'm going to go look up this guy. So I think we have a hero-making machine problem in America, and parents need to paint a better picture of what a hero is for their kids.
So well said. I agree with every word you said. It's. I think in part, I'm not saying, because I know I have a dear friend who's a conservative. He's a lawyer, and he has a daughter who's struggling with the gender identity stuff. So I'm not saying it never happens to conservatives, but I do think that there's a reason why this whole trans explosion is happening in these more leftist cities more than anywhere else, and why you have people like the Disney executive who's like, my one child is polyamorous and my other child is trans and my other child is a furry, like whatever. Right? Like it's no accident that that's happening, because like that's not going to happen in my family. And I'll tell you, there was another woman who I knew in New York. She's Black, her husband's Black. And she said that she was very concerned about this trans ideology at our school, where they were asking our boys whether they were sure they were boys every week. Mm-hmm. And she said at home, she and her husband were counter-programming, like, can you imagine grandpa showing up in a dress? Like they were doing some mild mocking of it so that their boys understood this is absurd and not an available option for you.
Yeah. As crazy as it is, one of the fears, Megyn, you've made a lot of money in your life. You're very successful. You're at the top of the game. You're the best at what you do. Okay. So that's Megyn Kelly. You're not in the top 1%. You're more like 1% of 1%. Okay. So you've been fortunate. I've been fortunate. We've done good for ourselves financially. So we can kind of use our resources to, push our weight a little bit, right? Like if I'm interviewing for schools that I was putting my kids into, I went to 7 different private schools here in South Florida. One of my first questions was, so, hey, Mary, thank you so much for taking the time for the appointment with us and our 3 kids. We're looking forward to coming to Florida. How does this school feel about capitalism? Excuse me? Yeah, how do you feel about, what do you think about these rich people, these entrepreneurs, these capitalists, these business owners? What is the school's position on capitalism? Well, we teach the benefits of capitalism and the pros and cons of it, but we also teach the pros and cons of socialism, and we teach the pros and cons of communism, and we allow the kids to decide, yeah, my kids are not going to go to your school. I mean, how much more history do you need to not have to teach the pros of communism? How many millions of people have been killed? So these are the questions that parents with resources can ask. But Megyn, I want you to think about this. Think if you and I are making $74,000 a year, okay? Household income we have is $120. Let's say $130, okay? 30% of that goes to taxes. So if you're making $130, 30% goes to taxes, you're left with $97,000. Let's just say $95,000. You're living in a 3-bedroom house, maybe a 4-bedroom house, 30 minutes outside of the city because that's what we can afford. And our kids can only go to a public school. And now you go and impose yourself with these things. So parents are now coming home and the kid's asking questions about LGBTQ. Then the parent tries to explain this to the kid. Then the kid goes to school and says, well, my mommy told me. Then the teacher calls the parent and says, hey, you can't tell that to your kids. Now the parent is afraid, doesn't know what to do because they could get kicked out. Now they're being boxed in a place that you are a extremist and all this stuff. Then the teachers can target. Do you see how this thing creates the kind of fear in parents that they're immobilized? So that causes a lot of parents to say, well, look, babe, don't say that to him because he's going to say that in school. Hey, son, you can't go tell that to your teacher. I remember living in Iran with my parents, going to a school and worried about the Hezbollah pulling us over. And if they ask you, are you a Christian? You got to say, ask my mommy and my daddy. Some parents right now in low and middle income families are right now going through this. And Megyn, I got to tell you, that's a scary place to be. You and I may not know about it today. You and I may not know the fears of that, but tens of millions of people are going through that today. So what do? What's the solution? Is it best to just kind of sit on the sidelines and let other people steal your kids for 20 years? And I don't mean physically, I mean emotionally and philosophically. And now your kid doesn't like you because your teachers and the school system pinned you against your kids. And they come home and they say, all you care about is this. What do? This is where bitching and complaining is not enough. This is where sitting on the sidelines and just talking to other parents and, yeah, Johnny's mom also feels this way. This is when we got to get involved. There's never, ever, Megyn, been a better time or more important of a time of a side gig. Do real estate on the side. Do something on the side to create an additional $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month to either put your kids in a private school or to homeschool. Or on top of that, if you can't do any of that stuff based on where you live, get involved. Right now, school boards, the voting percentage is not that high. It only is like 5% voting, 5 to 10% voting. If you go, voter turnout is not high. And parents who run, typically they have a very high chance of winning. So if you're sitting there saying, well, I'm not happy about what's going on, run for school board. You would be surprised how many other parents feel like you, and you become the courageous one. And other people in public school say, I kind of like what Mary has to say. Let's get behind her.
Right. You have to find a way of creating that power to vote with your feet or speak up at school and be listened to. You know, it's getting easier. I mean, I will say it's easier. When I was in the city at the school I just referenced, where they're asking our boys if they're girls every week, we formed this sort of underground network of parents. And that's where I met the friend I was telling you. And as I mentioned, she and her husband are Black. They did not appreciate the messages going to their brilliant son that he was somehow less than because of the color of his skin, which was the implicit message of America's original sin, and there's really no way around it, and you somehow are divided from your white and your Indian, your brown-skinned classmates, and you Hispanics too, you're in the same boat. She and the other parents of color were as mad as we were, where they were saying, you know, as I've told you the world before, about the white kids in every classroom where white children learn, there's a future killer cop. And teaching that there are 100 genders, and refusing to refer to the boys as boys now, or as your sons as sons. Now it's just your student. This hit the news just this week that in Vermont, there's this school. It's like, I'll pull up the name, like Founders. I can't remember. It's like Friends. I'll figure it out. Where they're getting rid of, same thing. They're only referring to boys as people who make sperm, and girls as people who make eggs. In school now. And these parents in Vermont, this is not, this is Vermont, which is a blue state, but come on, it's still America.